What's up everyone, welcome back to my channel for another true crime video. I already know that this will most likely be one of my most controversial videos to date, but I think it's really important that we look at cases like this and evaluate how the justice system treats certain people. This case in particular would make for a really interesting case study in terms of accountability, remorse, and forgiveness. As usual, by making this video, I mean absolutely no disrespect to any of the families or victims affected by this case. This video is purely for educational purposes and to give the audience more information about this case. In today's video, we will be talking about Louis van Schoor, who eventually earned himself the moniker of the dum-dum-killer, or more popularly, the apartheid-killer. Louis van Schoor is a man that shot more than 100 black and colored men during his time as a police officer and then later security guard during South Africa's apartheid era. Sybrand Jacobus Lodewikus van Schoor, which is his full name, was born in 1951 in the Eastern Cape province of South Africa. Today, the Eastern Cape is one of the most impoverished provinces in our country. The state of corruption is unimaginable, but the stark contrast between the former homeland areas and the previously white exclusive areas is especially jarring. East London, the area that van Schoor and his family spent most of their time in, has a history especially entrenched in racism and exclusion. In the Eastern Cape, back when these crimes took place as well as today, there is a large Xhosa and coloured community that live more adjacent to rather than alongside the white community. The political party that was basically responsible for apartheid first came into power in 1948. The first apartheid law, which was the Prohibition of Mixed Marriages Act, was passed in 1941. And as I said, van Schoor was born in 1951. The 50s were an incredibly hostile time in South Africa due to the introduction of the majority of the racist laws under the apartheid government. And of course, this was the time that Louis van Schoor grew up, and these were his formative years. You could easily draw parallels between apartheid South Africa and Nazi Germany because many of the laws were as a direct result of the influence of World War II. In fact, many of the laws were adopted and adapted from Nazi Germany laws. Van Schoor was an incredibly patriotic man, and in 1968, at the age of 16, he decided to join the police force, where he would serve as a police officer for the next 12.5 years. While working as a police officer, van Schoor met and married a woman by the name of Beverly, who had 3 sons from a previous marriage, namely Alistair, Lester, and Shane, who he would later adopt so that they could all have the same surname. On the 8th of November 1979, Beverly gave birth to their first child together at the East London Hospital, a baby girl by the name of Sabrina. Sabrina was van Schoor's first daughter, but he would later have another 2 daughters. In general, Sabrina has led a rather ironic life. We'll speak a little bit more about Sabrina later in the video, but I'll also link a documentary about her life, and this documentary is available on YouTube. Despite appearances, this little happy family wasn't so happy after all, with the boys recounting instances of heated domestic disputes between van Schoor and his wife, Beverly.
Incidents I can recall running around stitches ago, I can recall running around cars. Moving frantic, chasing off too.
In 1982, with his background in police work, van Schoor opened his own security company. Safety and security is one of South Africa's biggest industries, which is no surprise when you consider our high crime, specifically our high violent crime rates. This new company bolstered the family name. It made them incredibly wealthy and also very well known in their hometown of East London. Also in 1982, Beverly and Louis got a divorce, and Beverly moved with her 4 children from East London to her hometown of Queenstown, where she would later take over a security company known as Red Guard Security. So now the van Schoor name is associated with safety and security, both in East London, where Louis has his security company, and now in Queenstown, where Beverly has her security company. Another moniker for van Schoor is the dum-dum-killer, and he got this name because in the line of duty, he would use what was known as dum-dum bullets. So these bullets are basically miniature explosives, actually. They are essentially projectiles designed to expand on impact with the target, to increase the diameter of the bullet, and to obviously cause further injury and harm to the target. A lot of the premises that were protected by van Schoor's security company were fitted with silent alarms. He mainly protected schools and small white-owned businesses. When these silent alarms were triggered, he would go to the place in question armed with a 9mm parabellum. A parabellum is a gun with a long nose, the part where the bullet goes through, and his parabellum would be loaded with dum-dum bullets. If he found any intruder on the property, he would shoot them at very close range, more often than not in the chest. In 1987, an investigation was conducted against Van Schoor by the police as the public was starting to take notice of all of these killings. So the killings started in 1986, and by the time the investigation was conducted and concluded, he had killed 26 people.
88, I heard that there was an investigation against me. Some people told me I must get out of the business while I can. What for? I haven't done anything wrong.
In a 3-month time period, the coroner had signed 6 death certificates in which Van Schoor was the person responsible for these deaths. And the coroner didn't find this suspicious. He didn't raise the alarm bells. He believed that Van Schoor was just a white security guard doing his job and protecting white businesses against black crime. The 1987 investigation was not the only inquest into his activities, but he was exonerated every single time, despite survivors stating that they had been shot when trying to surrender. A police spokesman at the time described him as a, quote, bloody efficient security guard, unquote. There were also victim and witness accounts of how Van Schoor would grab innocent people that were walking down the streets. He would drag them to the place that he was guarding and he would shoot them. All of these victims were black. And of course, because they were black victims, it was their worthless word against a white former police officers. They had no chance of justice. He never tried to hide any of these shootings. In fact, he himself reported these to the police, and the police would be summoned and they would arrive on the scene of every single crime. Detectives allowed him to change his sworn statements to say that he had met a legal requirement to give a warning before shooting. When a local politician asked that his gun license be revoked or at the very least suspended, the police refused, stating that they did not want to take away his livelihood. On the 11th of July 1988, 13-year-old Liefie Reginald Pieterse and his 14-year-old friend John Swartboy entered a wimpy restaurant in the middle of the night with the intention of stealing cash from the register. Upon entering this restaurant, they tripped the silent alarm, and that evening, Louis Van Schoor was patrolling the area and he went to the scene of the tripped alarm. When the two boys heard that someone was approaching, that someone was now in the building, they hid in a restroom, crouching behind a toilet. Van Schoor entered the restroom and ordered the boys to walk toward the exit and not turn back. He then fatally shot Pieterse, which is when Swartboy turned around, resulting in 2 shots to his own leg and a 3rd to his buttock. It was only in 1989 that public organizations in particular started really looking into these cases and putting more and more pressure on various departments and law enforcement to investigate Louis Van Schoor and his business further. According to police reports and Van Schoor himself, he shot many unarmed black men and boys at point-blank range during the course of his work as a security guard. Sybrand Tom was a 16-year-old black boy that had survived one of these shootings in 1989 and was subsequently interviewed by a group of lawyers from Grahamstown running the Legal Resources Center. They interviewed him at the request of the Black Sash organization. The Black Sash organization was a non-violent, anti-apartheid, liberal white women's resistance organization that was founded on the 19th of May 1955 by Jean Sinclair, Ruth Foley, Elizabeth McLaren, Tertia Pabus, Jean Bosaza, and Helen Newton Thompson. The Legal Resources Center from Grahamstown reported a charge of attempted murder on behalf of Sybrand Tom at the Fleets Police Station in East London. On the 28th of October, Van Schoor shot and killed 18-year-old burglary suspect Lindile Hilty at a meat packing factory. This factory was owned by a man named Peter Augustinus. Business owners in and around East London, they supported Van Schoor and his methods, because at the end of the day, he was protecting them, he was hired by them, so of course they would support him. However, his business did start to get a lot of media attention due to all the killings, even garnering international attention. It's truly no surprise that a white man mass killing black men was garnering so much international attention, because this was happening during the time period that South Africa was heavily sanctioned. Sanctions were imposed on South Africa from 1986 until October of 1993, and these sanctions, they devastated the South African economy. So we have a country where racism is law, in a time when a lot of other countries are moving away from segregation, away from race-based classification, away from overt racism. The government is committing some of the most atrocious, some of the most heinous human rights violations, and a white former police officer is exclusively killing black men. At the end of the year, he decided to sell his business and start farming. Not long after this career transition, however, Louis van Schoor was arrested and charged with over 40 crimes, 43 to be exact. Unfortunately, I can't go into detail about the circumstances of the murders and the lives of the victims themselves, because I couldn't find that information. However, at the end of the day, I make these videos so that the voices of the victims can continue to be heard long after they are gone. So even though I can't tell you about the victims, the least I can do is share their names.
Serial killer, a mass murderer. I don't agree with it. I was a crime fighter.
He obviously pleaded innocent to all counts because he truly believed that he had done nothing wrong. He believed that he was just doing his job and acting in the line of duty, protecting the businesses that he was charged to protect. These killings all took place in the line of duty, and so he believed that they were justified. His trial began on the 19th of August 1991, 2 years after his initial arrest. After dropping all 3 assault charges and withdrawing 11 of the 21 murder charges due to insufficient evidence, Van Schoor was left with 29 charges. In South Africa, the death penalty was basically put on hold in 1990 before its complete abolition in 1995. So luckily for Van Schoor, his case was not being tried as a capital case, so even if he was found guilty on all counts, he would not face the death penalty. His trial was quite a spectacle, and despite Van Schoor admitting to shooting over 100 men, the white residents of East London fully supported him, even displaying "I love Louis" stickers decorated with 3 bullet holes through a bleeding heart on their car bumpers, shop windows, and even in their homes. After an 8-month trial on the 10th of April 1992, Sybrand Jacobus Lodewikus Louis van Schoor was found guilty of 7 counts of murder and 2 of attempted murder at the East London Supreme Court. For his crimes, he was sentenced to 91 years imprisonment at Fort Glamorgan Prison. But of course, his sentences were to run concurrently, so he effectively only got 20 years imprisonment, and he would be eligible for parole after serving just half of that. That's not even 1 year, not even 6 months actually, for every life that he claimed. Judge Lionel Malansky, who was the one presiding over this case, admonished police and investigators for not acting sooner and allowing Van Schoor to continue killing even when they already had such a high death rate in all his security cases. The judge also said that he showed callous disregard for human life, but he believed that he could be rehabilitated. Society was to blame for his actions, as South Africa's violent environment led Van Schoor to committing these crimes. When Van Schoor went to prison, his first daughter Sabrina was 12 years old at the time and living with her mother Beverly in Queenstown. I won't go into too much detail about Sabrina's life because, like I said, there's a documentary about her life. I'll have it linked down below and it goes into full details. She's interviewed in the documentary, as well as her father, Louis van Schoor. Sabrina had quite a few black friends, and majority of her friends were from the coloured and the Indian community of East London, Queenstown, the Eastern Cape in general. She had a multicultural, diverse friend group, basically. And this is something that Beverly was not fond of. She did not approve of it. She told Sabrina on multiple occasions that she did not accept her friendships, and she oftentimes would not even allow her to be friends with people of other races. All of Sabrina's boyfriends were colored men, and Beverly absolutely hated this. According to a family friend, Beverly would hit Sabrina. She'd hit her with a shoe, with a wooden spoon. She would hit her in the face to discourage her from hanging around colored people, from hanging around people of other races. She would even go as far as to lock Sabrina in her bedroom to prevent her from going outside and fraternizing with the other group. When Sabrina was 18 years old, she fell pregnant, and Beverly was beyond furious because the man that had impregnated Sabrina was, of course, colored. She forced Sabrina to terminate the pregnancy to get an abortion. A few years later, however, Sabrina fell pregnant for a second time, and once again, the father of the child was a colored man. This time, however, Van Schoor, he spoke to Beverly, and he told her that she shouldn't force Sabrina to have another abortion, because the more she forces her to do things, the more Sabrina will be against her. So rather just let Sabrina do these things that Sabrina is going to do in front of her instead of behind her back. So Sabrina is pregnant for a second time, but this time she doesn't get an abortion. She actually does give birth, and she gives birth to a baby girl named Tatum. When Tatum was born, Beverly played the role of the doting grandmother to a T. She bragged about her beautiful white granddaughter to anyone that would listen.
The day that Tatum was born, they phoned me from the delivery room and she said to me, "She's a white little baby." He said to me, "See, she's white, eh? She's a white little girl." I just used to say, "Yeah, she's a little white girl."
You can see in photos from when she was a baby that she was very obviously not white, but Beverly would hear none of it. She would become enraged if anyone even suggested that Tatum had a drop of melanin in her system. The relationship between Beverly and Sabrina continued to deteriorate because Sabrina refused to not be friends with black people. This hostility, resentment, and anger would finally come to a head on the 22nd of March, 2002. 3 weeks prior, Sabrina had spoken to a friend and former boyfriend of hers, Gino, who had spent time in prison, and asked if he could arrange a hitman for her mother. Gino introduced her to a 24-year-old black man with a criminal record called Feza Mduchana.
Supposed to pay Gina 150,000. And then I don't know what Gina was going to pay Feza.
After a few weeks of planning, on the morning of the 22nd of March, Sabrina let Feza into the house. She handed him a bread knife and pointed to her mother's bedroom door. She then walked to her mother's room, grabbed her daughter, because in the mornings her daughter would usually be with her mother. She grabbed her daughter and took her to her own bedroom and closed the door. That is when Feza walked into Beverly's bedroom, and after a brief struggle, he killed her. Sabrina then stood in the passage and looked at her mother, who was now lying on her bedroom floor. By this time, she was already deceased, and she had blood coming out of a wound in her neck. She then asked Feza if he was done and if he was sure that she was dead. When Feza confirmed to her that the job was now completed and Beverly was now deceased, Sabrina handed him some cash, her mother's cell phone, and the keys to her car. After he left, Sabrina reported her car as stolen. So it didn't take long for police to track down the car and to find Feza. And when Feza was arrested, because by this time she had already called the police had come to the house and seen that her mother had been murdered. So they knew that whoever had the car was most likely the person that had killed Beverly. So when they arrested Feza, he spilled the beans on. He immediately ratted her out and told them exactly what had happened, that Sabrina had hired him to kill her mother. They were both arrested and charged with murder and conspiracy to commit murder, but neither of them ever went on trial because they both pleaded guilty to their charges, and they struck up a plea deal with Sabrina receiving 25 years imprisonment and Feza receiving basically a life term. Gino, the person who had gotten them together, he was never charged for the crime. And like I said, Sabrina was given a 25-year sentence, and she's actually eligible for parole this year. So it'll be very interesting to see what comes of that, if she will apply for parole, if she'll be granted parole. I'd be very interested to see what happens with that. The irony of this particular situation is that Sabrina's father was hailed as a hero by the white residents of East London for killing black people, whereas Sabrina was hailed as a hero by the black residents of East London for organizing the murder of a white woman who many people believed was a racist. The irony continues in the fact that Sabrina was actually reunited with her father because of this murder. She was sentenced to serve her term at the exact same prison that her father was at, Fort Glamorgan Prison in East London. It is a unisex prison, so there is a side for females and there's also a side for males. After Sabrina's arrest and her sentencing, Tatum was put in foster care because no one from Sabrina's family would take Tatum in. Her brothers denounced her, her brothers disowned her, and they wouldn't take in her daughter. So Tatum ended up with a foster family. She's being fostered by a white woman. I'm not sure if she's still being fostered by a white woman, but we'll get there in a minute. After spending 2 years with his daughter in prison, on the 29th of October 2002, Louis van Schoor was released on parole after serving just 12 years of his 20-year sentence in the Fort Glamorgan prison. He even had a fiancée at this time, 38-year-old Eunice de Koch. She was a lawyer from Cape Town, and they had met through the media 4 years prior to his release date. Sabrina asked that her father be given custody of Tatum upon his release because he, at this point, was her only family. And Van Schoor said that he would be willing to take custody of his granddaughter because at the end of the day it was his granddaughter, and he didn't mind the fact that she was half-colored, that she was a mixed race baby. I didn't see any article that said that he ever got custody of her, so I assume that she's still being fostered by the white woman that initially fostered her in the beginning. Van Schoor had already been given a very short sentence. I mean, for being the convicted killer of 7 people, he only got 20 years. But what is so incredible about his parole is that after shooting over 100 black men and killing no less than 7 of them, in 2004, thanks to an amnesty on his 80th birthday, Louis van Schoor was granted special parole by none other than Nelson Mandela. He was just one of many whose sentences were reduced due to amnesty. A lot of people that were sentenced just before the fall of apartheid, when this amnesty was happening, they got their sentences reduced or they were immediately let out on parole. Louis van Schoor was one of them. Apparently, Van Schoor was a, quote, model prisoner who showed leadership qualities, unquote. Van Schoor put these leadership qualities to great use because in 2016 he became the director and beneficiary of a multi-million rand dairy farm project specifically intended to empower black people. This project and his appointment as a director, mentor, beneficiary was approved by the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. This was a crazy case. I'm sorry that there wasn't a lot of background information and that it was shorter than usual. This is the part of the video that is the post-case commentary, so I'll be reading from a few articles and giving my own commentary on that. If you are not interested in that part of the video, then that's the end of the video for you. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this video interesting, please do go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more videos from me. If you are interested in this part of the video, then welcome. Like usual, I will be linking all of the articles that I'll be reading from in the description box. I won't be reading every single word from the article. I'll be reading excerpts from the article. The first article was published by The Guardian on the 4th of August 2006. Apartheid-killer finds religion but not remorse. Always. Killers always find religion. They always find religion. Case of freed racist murderer highlights refusal of whites to take responsibility for the past. Seated at a restaurant terrace in East London, a seaside town in the Eastern Cape, the former security guard is a picture of relaxed confidence, soaking up sunshine while reminiscing about his days as an apartheid folk hero. The restaurant that he was sitting at, that he was being interviewed at, overlooked one of his former crime scenes. In fact, it overlooked the wimpy where he shot and killed 14-year-old Leafy Peterse. And he's sitting there cool, calm, collected. He's the relaxed picture of an apartheid folk hero. He's reminiscing about the good old days. The reluctance to atone has been laid bare in a book published last week, The Color of Murder by Heidi Holland, which investigates the blood-soaked trail not only of Van Schoor, but also his daughter Sabrina, who hired a hitman to murder her mother. The macabre tale is likely to reignite debate about those whites who shun the spirit of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and mock Rainbow Nation rhetoric. I think this is actually a really interesting book. I'll have the link for that in the description box as well. It's available on Amazon. It's a really interesting take on race and crime. It's an interesting take on family and crime as well. I mean, like I said in the main video, the irony that Van Schoor is known to be the killer of black people. White people celebrated him for killing black people. He was the father of someone who was celebrated by the likes of those that he killed, and she was celebrated for killing a white woman. Upon his release in 2004, Van Schoor said he had found God. In an interview this week, he tried to clarify his position. "I never apologized for what I did. I apologized for any hurt or pain that I caused through my actions during the course of my work."
If I harmed you guys by killing your child, I'm sorry that your child is dead, but I'm not sorry that I killed them. I was just doing my job.
Thanks to his changed appearance and low profile, he has faced no backlash. Few black people recognize him, including the bookseller who took his order for The Color of Murder. When Van Schoor gave his name, the penny dropped. "She nearly fell off her chair," he says, smiling. I just think it's so disgusting. It's actually disgusting how he's so nonchalant and blasé about what he did. He's so unremorseful. But in the documentary, you will see how he really does not see anything wrong with what he did. He is still of the mind that he didn't do anything wrong. He was just doing his job, and the people that died during the course of his work, they deserved it. They deserved it because they were black kids, colored kids, going into businesses where they had no business going. Married 4 times and now engaged to a local woman, Van Schoor, speaking softly and warily, says he is happy and content, but he does not seem to approve of the new South Africa. "Everything has changed. People's attitudes, the service in shops, it's not the same." You can't just say, all of these races live in South Africa, they all have equal rights, they all have equal freedoms, and now everybody is happy. And that's not the case at all. And the next article that I will be reading to you is going to highlight exactly why those injustices continue to be infested in our society to this day. But let's finish this one. Juanita Kindness, a 36-year-old white taxi driver parked outside the restaurant, says the security guard might have fired even if the intruder was white. "But you don't find white people breaking into places," she said. Crime has no race, crime has no color, and crime has no creed. I just don't understand racism. I don't understand racism. I don't understand bigotry. Like, it's just so stupid to me. It's so stupid to judge someone, to ostracize someone because of something that they can't control, like the color of their skin. It's the dumbest thing in the world to me, and I just don't understand it. In the next article, we will be elaborating more on the little tidbit that I gave you about Van Schoor working on a farm, being a beneficiary. And the second article was published by Times Live on the 22nd of May 2016. So this was 10 years after he did his initial interview with The Guardian. The first time I came across this article, I thought it was satire. I thought, no, it has to be a joke because there's no way that what they say is happening is happening. There's just no way that this is true. Then I remembered, oh, but this is South Africa, our land. And then it all made sense. How racist mass killer milks the poor. An unrepentant apartheid-era mass murderer is a beneficiary of a multi-million rand government land reform program meant to benefit previously disadvantaged emerging black farmers. That little snippet says everything. It says enough. It says it all. Louis Van Schoor, 65, who murdered 39 black people between 1986 and 1989 while employed as a security guard in East London, is now a director and beneficiary of a dairy farm project that is meant to empower black people. Now it has emerged that Van Schoor is earning a living through a government-sponsored project that is meant to redress the inequalities of the past. Is this not ironic? Is this not... How can you read this and think to yourself that this is really happening? Why wouldn't you think that this is satire? Why wouldn't you think that this is a joke? A few things caught my attention in this. First of all, he's a convicted murderer. Okay, we will elaborate on that in a minute. Second of all, he was 65 years old. The age of retirement in South Africa is 65, and that is linked to the fact that, third of all, this is a government position. At 65, you're supposed to retire. Why is the government employing a 65-year-old murderer instead of the youth? Why is the government employing someone who was convicted of murder, who was convicted of the murder of black people? Why would the government employ someone? Why would they employ someone who was previously employed to solidify the inequalities that have led us to where we are today? Why would they do that? How is that redressing inequalities? How does that make sense to anybody? Are there no background checks? And from what I know is that if you have a criminal record, you cannot work in government. This man murdered 39 people, and he's not only is he working in government technically because it's a government sponsored program, but he is the beneficiary of this program. And it wasn't little money that they were making. The people that became the beneficiaries of this program, they then became the owners of this dairy farm. Kingsdale Dairy Farm, 30 kilometers from East London, was bought by the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform in 2011 for 11 million rand through the Land Redistribution for Agricultural Development program. The program's online pamphlet states clearly that it is meant to benefit Africans, Indians, and coloureds, the groups that were economically sidelined by the apartheid regime's racist laws. I know for a fact that Louis van Schoor is not black, is not Indian, and is most certainly not coloured. So how did this happen? The initial beneficiaries of the farm were emerging farmers Lunathi Mzimba, Christopher Ngobelanga, and Patricia Ngobelanga. Van Schoor was introduced to the trio in December 2013 as a manager and mentor, and later became a director and beneficiary when Mzimba left the project. Are you telling me you couldn't find one black farmer that wanted to fill this role, to fill Mzimba's role? You couldn't find one Indian farmer? You couldn't find one colored farmer? You had to find the one white person that killed 39 black people. You had to find him to come and be a mentor, a director, a beneficiary. He had to be the... Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Every time I come across this quote, I just get even more annoyed. So this is what Van Schoor had to say. It's all behind us. We don't want to open up old wounds. I go into the village, they accept me for what I am giving back, and that is satisfaction to me. I felt remorse a long time ago. That is why I can now go into the village alone and they accept me. I don't know if it's my cynicism. I don't know if it's the color of my skin. I don't know if it's constantly seeing black people being disadvantaged in spaces that are meant to uplift them. I don't know if it's that, but I hate this. Professor Lungisile Ntsebeza, the Director of African Studies at the University of Cape Town, said it was shocking that the government had chosen someone with Van Schoor's past to be a mentor for the project. It is unbelievable that a criminal like this is a mentor. This raises a lot of questions about the department's own screening process and how they chose this mentor, Ntsebeza said. In fact, the whole concept of having white mentors is controversial itself. It comes from the premise that African farmers have no capacity to farm on their own. It's a violation of land reform, he said, and called the process into question. I completely agree with this. Before Jan van Riebeeck and friends came to South Africa, there were black farmers like the Khoisan. There's this controversy online that the Khoisan were not black people, and I don't understand where that's coming from. To me, race is arbitrary. Race is the most arbitrary classification system ever known to man. So back to farming. To say that a white mentor is needed to teach black people how to farm in Africa, what do you think they were doing for all those years before Jan van Riebeeck and friends came along? Like, what do you think they ate? What do you think they ate? Yes, the San, they were hunter-gatherers, but the Khoikhoi, they were not hunter-gatherers. For a long time, they were, what's it called when you're not a nomad? The opposite of nomad. They were non-nomadic people. They farmed. They had grains. Siyabulela Manona, an East London-based land reform expert, described Van Schoor's presence at the farming as worrying. It is. It is. Land reform is intended to benefit historically disadvantaged people, irrespective of his past. It is not for whites. I just need to know. I need to know who sat at their desk, you know, in a little government office where there's no AC, where the system is offline. Maybe the system was offline that day as well, you know, South African proverb. Who sat in their office, sat at their desk and said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take my pen, I'm going to go, doops. I'm going to land on a name. Louis van Schoor is going to come up. I'm not going to do a background check, because clearly a background check wasn't done because he has a criminal record. When I don't do a background check, I'm not going to see that he has a criminal record. I'm not going to see that he has a criminal record for murder, that he was convicted of murder. I'm not going to see that he was convicted for the murder of black people, that he was working for the apartheid police. I'm not going to see all of that because I just need to get a name on this page. I just need to fill in a name, make sure that the millions leave. And I don't even think, you know what, that's another thing. Corruption, that's another thing. Let's not talk about that because 500 billion is gone. The former security guard is now the beneficiary of the Kingsdale Dairy Trust project, in which he has a sizable stake. It is, however, unclear exactly how much he is paid or what his share is. Van Schoor and the Ngubelanga family own 90% of the 200-hectare farm, while the 18 workers own 10%. The farm has a turnover of 400,000 rand a month, we're going to do some maths, which is about 5 million rand a year. The farm also gets money from the Department of Basic Education for distributing milk to its school nutrition program in various schools in Mdantsane, Newlands, Potsdam, and Ngorani. The farm has 540 Jersey cows, 4 tractors, and 3 bakkies, so the farm has assets. Van Schoor declined to reveal how much he earned from the farm. He lives on the farm with his wife. He said he had applied for the job to manage the farm after he saw an advert by the Department of Rural Development. I think for him to have even applied to work at the farm, to do whatever at the farm, because the advert, it was advertised for previously disadvantaged people. So the fact that he applied in the first place is disrespectful, like it's rude. Why? So they're making 400,000 a month, 400,000 divided by, no, multiplied by 90 divided by 100. Am I doing this right? Yes. So they own 90%. Him and the other two him and the family, they own 90%. So that's 360,000. He doesn't want to say what his share is, but let's just pretend that it's 50%. Let's divide that by 2. So he alone is making 180,000 rand a month from this farm. We're not even talking about the tractors and anything else that's happening from the departments and the assets. We're not talking about that. Let's multiply that by 12. In a year, he's making 2.16 million rand from this farm, from this land redistribution project that was intended to uplift the previously disadvantaged black, Indian, colored people. He's neither black, Indian, nor colored, but he's making money from it. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else that I can say about that. Like, it's infuriating, it's disturbing to me, I can't. Now he wants to write a book. He wants to write a book about his life and his job, his duty as a South African apartheid era folk hero. He wants to write about that. I mean, go get that coin, boy. Go ahead and continue to exploit and disrespect the families of those whose lives you've ruined. Go make your millions off the backs of more poor black people. Go ahead and do that. I actually think I'm getting a little bit too angry now. Like, me being calm is me being extremely angry. I'm getting too heated. I'm getting a little bit too in my feelings about this. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up and end it right here. With all of that said, it does bring us to the end of this case and of course to the end of this video. I'm more interested to know your thoughts and opinions on this case. Are you for reconciliation or are you against reconciliation? We'll talk about that in the comment section down below. What are your thoughts on Sabrina murdering her mother for being a racist? If you found this video interesting, please do give it a thumbs up. It lets me know what types of videos you want to see on this channel. And if you want to see more videos from me, please consider subscribing to my channel and clicking that notification bell so you can know every single time I upload a new video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!